in 2018 there was around about 13 deaths from tools falling at height.
Wow.
Blimey.
Again, just looking at my notes, 13.8% of fatal workplace injuries are caused by falling objects.
Hello and welcome to another CEF Tech Talking podcast. We've got a fantastic guest here today. We've got Andrew. Andrew, hello and welcome to our Tech Talking podcasts. Andrew, you're from DeWalt, aren't you?
Yes, I am indeed. So thank you. Good afternoon.
What is it you do there?
What are you,
do?
Andrew? Tell us about you.
Talk to us about what you do and how you do it.
So I work with CEF on a day-to-day basis as a national account manager for DeWalt.
Okay.
So basically anything and everything that's available DeWalt-wise through CEF comes across my desk.
Okay, so you're the man to go to for all the... And I was lucky enough, Dave, to go and spend a morning with Andrew up at Northampton, your office up there in Northampton.
Yes, yeah, up in our UK DC.
And we started to talk about the ranges and what they've got available. And one of the things that instantly just struck home with me was when he started to talk about this thing called Perform and Protect, which I knew nothing about.
No, I didn't. Until you told me that we were going to talk about it, I didn't know either.
And then there's a guy here who knows a lot about it.
He seems to, doesn't he?
So
He's dropping a few hints.
yes.
So what's the history of Perform and Protect? How long's it been available on DeWalt kit?
Quite a long time, to be fair. So, I mean, essentially Perform and Protect, it came around in 2007. A lot of functions that powertools had. It was developed to... essentially reduce downtime on tools from injury, protect the end user is the ultimate.
That's the bit that I picked up on here. We're looking at protecting the people that are actually using the bits of kit. And one of the things that I've known through construction sites, especially now, and my father-in-law, he manages construction sites, they are so big on dust. Dust. Everything he's doing now is around how you manage dust, how you reduce dust, and then ultimately how you can perform the task without creating dust, I think is the big one. It's very hard to do that in our line of work. You can't really do that. So therefore you have to manage the risk out. And your bits of kit do this, don't they? If they've got these functions built in.
Yes, yeah, essentially. So the Perform and Protect program isn't just about dust extraction.
Okay, so I know that's
So
one of the elements.
What's its brief? What does Perform and Protect actually do for the user?
The brief for Perform and Protect is to meet job site guidelines. It's essentially it's ultimate safety for the end user. So you don't just have dust extraction, dust management. You have vibration levels. You have safety controls with the machines, which is things like kickback brakes or an E-clutch, which will reduce rotation on a drill.
Yep.
And then the new addition to the range is the lanyard ready side of things, which ties in with working at height as well.
So I mean, I'm smirking a little bit here because I remember when I was young, way back when, Dave.
A long time.
Yeah, my boss used to have a drill. It was known as the Killer, this thing. It was an absolute beast. It was big metal, absolutely, and it used to snatch. When you were drilling, it used to snatch. He was the only one actually who could control it. Now, many people were talking about sprains and bits and bobs on the wrist. If it snatches, it will snap your wrist. Loads of people spoke about that on site. But that's another element of this, isn't it? You spoke about this, and that was one of the things that you mentioned. So Perform and Protect offers a lot more protection. If only it was around in my day.
You wouldn't be the man you are if you hadn't been through those traumatic experiences with that drill. So, Andrew, let's break them down. Let's look at dust. So what are we doing here to protect against dust and to conform with these sites? And why the big push? Why?
So essentially the idea behind it is to take dust away from the point of the drill bit. So obviously it offers a cleaner hole, but it takes it away from the user. So it's not just to do with drilling. If you look at things like the wall chaser that we do, twin blades cutting through grease blocks. If you don't have any dust extraction.
They did.
Not anymore. That's what we've left to find out, aren't we?
Yeah, exactly. But so a lot of the machines have dust ports on the top, which will just throw material straight out. You put the DeWalt dust extractor, whether it's an L class or an M class, onto that. With a vacuum, it takes that dust away.
Let's just chew into those classes. So what's the L and the M? How do we...
So the L class is fairly entry-level stuff, sort of low class risk. The medium class is, as it says, medium class risk, so silica dust and things like that. There is a H class vac, but that's not currently available as far as I'm aware on the market. So L class and M class the big thing is cordless as well. So it ties in with our...
So for somebody working on a site, would be M class you'd be looking for?
Generally speaking, yes, but it depends on the particular requirements of that site.
Now, the site that my father-in-law he's working on, it is M class throughout. They specifically said that anything when they're trying to manage and their risk assessments of the paper trail clearly says it must be M on there.
So, from your experience, how informed are people about that? I mean, if you're booked for a job, you rock up on a site and it's an M class and you haven't got the kit, you won't be on, will you?
Essentially, no.
No, that's what they're doing now. They're starting to say if you haven't got the kit, you can't do it. And that's a big change we've seen sort of the last 5 years, really, is that you need to make sure that you have got kit that would allow you to comply with the risk assessment and then comply with the legislation. It's a massive thing about management.
You mentioned earlier on there's a real push from the Health and Safety Executive on this now, so they're really firming up on this, and that's why it's now coming to the fore in our conversations, presumably.
Yes, yeah, essentially. I mean, silica dust is the second biggest killer in the construction industry. I think it's something like over 500 workers die per year from silica dust. It's second only to asbestos.
Now, we've known asbestos for years.
Yeah, that's the old enemy, isn't it?
That's
so what would generate silica dust, just to take it right down to the basics?
So concrete, mortar and sandstone, they're kind of the biggest.
Which you might find on a building site.
Which you can probably find on a building site,
You might be drilling into that occasionally. So anytime you drill into that, you're producing silica dust, which is the second biggest killer.
Yes, yeah. As I said, second only to asbestos.
Crazy, isn't it? They think that there's not an electrician in the world that can avoid that sort of stuff.
So you're dealing with it by what? Efficient extraction, or is it easy to use? What features make it the desirable one?
So any of the tools that have dust extraction on, whether it's the wall chaser we mentioned earlier, or whether it's a circular saw or some of the jigsaws, all of our dust extractors have what we call an airlock. So essentially you pop the dust extractor onto the machine, turn a locking collar, and that's it.
It's ready to go.
Right.
So your machine is then ready to go. One of the other features of Perform and Protect is the wireless control element. So as soon as you pull the trigger on the machine, it will trigger the M-class vac to fire up. As soon as you release that trigger, that will then cut out as well.
Smart.
Yeah, it is smart. And of course, it's not required in the old days. Because I've got an extractor, an old one, that you plug the tool into. So when it draws current, it turns the extractor on, and then it turns it off when it stops drawing current. But all this stuff now is battery, so it needs that wireless trigger.
Yes,
Everything's battery now, isn't it, on site? I mean, it ticks so many more boxes. It stops the trip hazard. It helps with loads of things that you're trying to achieve. So dust extraction is one really big key component that you've mentioned there.
I understand there's a drill bit that will extract the dust down the core.
I saw this the other week.
Yeah, that sounds very exciting. Can you talk about that?
through the centre of the bit, yeah. So the hollow point drill bits that we offer.
Who knew?
Essentially, there is a dust extraction port at the top of the drill bit. So as you're drilling through into your material, it will suck all of the material up.
That's fantastic.
All of the waste material up through the drill bit
great,
and out into
So
the dust extractor.
Do we have to be aware of a range? Is that the higher range tools? What range
It is
that?
indeed. So essentially anything that features Perform and Protect logo on the drill. So if we take this SDS, for
Let's have a
example.
look. So for those of you on YouTube, we'll be able
If
to
you look
see
at it, or pop over to YouTube now and have a look.
Yeah,
They'll see the logo, yeah.
So the logos are situated in and around the body of the actual device, aren't they?
it.
So this one's sat here.
If you take a look at the grinder that we do as well, it's just on the top of the body of the grinder there.
So you'll easily know. You'll know if you've got one of these.
Because this has been around for a while. That logo's been around for a while. So if you look at your DeWalt tool now and see that, that's not just a marketing logo. That means it's got these features.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. It'll be one of the many features of Perform and Protect, whether it's extraction or vibration or anything.
Vibration. So
Okay, let's move on to that then. So we've done
vibration's something
dust
else,
extraction.
isn't it? So vibration is, we know, a problem. A real good friend of ours, you might have heard of him, Billy Byrne. That one off the telly.
I avoid him.
A lot of people do actually. So Billy Byrne, he always talks about the problems he's had through vibration in the past, and he talks about it and says white finger or white knuckle, I think he calls it, and he says some of the problems he's had. But this Perform and Protect, if it's the chance of vibration, this reduces vibration, does it not?
It does indeed, yes. So since July 2005, there was a directive that actually became law.
Okay.
To reduce the control of vibrations into a user, essentially.
So that was done here. I mean, just looking at your typical SDS drill, it's got the logo on, so I know there are some features built into this one. And the instant thing you can see, Dave, on here, for those that can't see this, instantly, on top of the drill, there are some...
Well, it's like a compression bellows, isn't it? Separating the handle from the actual motor body. And you can see very easily how that could work.
Yes, it does compress. So any vibration coming in this end from the drill bit is going to take the shock waves up rather than hitting the handle.
But you'd negate that if you pushed too hard on the handle and compress those hard. So you've got to let the drill do the work.
Essentially, yes, yeah. I mean, if you're using a drill bit, an SDS drill bit that's nice and sharp, you won't really need to put a lot of force, to be fair.
I got told off for that.
Something like this particular machine we're looking at here is 3 kilojoules of impact energy transmitted up the shaft. The handle there will reduce that vibration being transferred to the user.
That's another thing, isn't it? So it's a really big thing. I mean, we laugh and we joke about it, but it is a really serious thing, and we know that people have had claims against employers in the past because this technology exists, but they've chosen not to use it.
Yeah, well, the Health and Safety at Work Act. You can't be reckless. You've got to use what's given to you. On the angle grinder we've got here on the desk as well. How does that protect against vibrations? I can't see a bellows or anything on that.
No, so it doesn't from vibration
because there's not a lot coming down the shaft.
Not a lot coming through with.
But that presumably you're looking at snatching and that type of thing on that.
Yeah, this comes into the control element that you have with the machines. So, for example, if you're grinding through something and the disc was to snag, it would transmit that through to the machine. The e-brake on the machine would kick in and it cuts it completely. Yeah.
So rather than just continuing to snatch and send you off the steps that you're working on or something like that, it will stop you doing that.
So that name e-brake, that stops the motor, does it?
Yes, it's a kickback brake essentially, so it will stop the grinder from flying out of your hands.
Yeah.
Which ultimately nobody wants.
It's never a good thing, is it?
No.
It's not a good look on site, is it? You've got that foot flying across.
Can I have a grinder back, please?
Especially if you are working at heights, which a lot of these would be.
Absolutely, yeah.
You'd be using these on stud work, wouldn't you, to try and hang your basket or your tray and stuff like that. So you could be working.
So that's where the lanyard comes in. Talk about that, Andrew. What feature is that?
So the lanyard ready feature is pretty new to the Perform and Protect range, to be fair. I think in 2018 there was around about 13 deaths from tools falling at height.
Wow. Blimey.
Again, just looking at my notes, 13.8% of fatal workplace injuries are caused by falling objects. So there is definitely a need to have stuff tethered at height. And again, going back to the M-class and the L-class element, a lot of sites won't let you work at height without having your tools tethered.
Ah, okay.
No.
So with the machines being cordless, you have a tether which will attach to the battery, then attach to the machine, and then attach to yourself. And ultimately, if the machines are engaged in a fall, there is an indicator to say that machine has had enough stress go through it and you need to replace the tether.
Clever.
It's always a fascinating thing to think when we bring all these safety features in, they often, I want to say this carefully because I don't want to sound in any way negative, they often slow the process down because you're having to do things extra to just getting on with the job. What sort of feedback do you get about people using the tools?
We do get a little bit of feedback about that, that ultimately all these measures can, reduce the time or increase the time, But ultimately, if you're at work and you're safe, you're going to go home at the end of the day.
I think that's the big thing, isn't it? Everyone deserves the right to go home at the end of the day's work. And I know that we do see, and unfortunately, I'm not wanting to stereotypical typecast people, but the small one-man bands will take a lot more risk than some of the larger employers. And especially if you're employed, you go to your employer, ask for some stuff, and generally they'll see fit to give you the stuff. And it's those others maybe that could do with just looking outside the box a little bit and saying,
well, it is, but also they're the ones that if they get an injury, they're going to lose income, aren't they? So you need to protect yourself to stay active and to stay earning. And I would imagine that, the business of not just having to clear up. When you make a load of dust, then you've got to spend time clearing up. Time-consuming, isn't it?
Electricians don't do that. You may have heard the rumours. There's a lot to be said out there. The people said electricians don't clean up. We do tidy up. But anyway, we're king of the site. We don't have to do that. Worry about that. Until contracharge comes in and they start contracharging us, then we'll clear up. But no, I think one thing that I've learned and one thing that I can safely say, without coming and seeing you last week and then just realising, I thought it was just a logo, I must admit. It was just a logo. But having sat with you last week and realising just what goes into that logo and what goes into the design of the pieces of kit that is all available for us, it's wonderful to see that there's so much protection out there for end users, and that's the ultimate part. It's the end user, and we've said earlier on, everyone deserves the right to go home at the end of the day's work, and they do.
Well, protect yourself and comply with requirements to get the jobs. And that's what we're talking about, isn't
There's
it?
a lot of that flying around now. So you're probably aware that there are legislation coming in. Your site has probably got some legislation around it that you have to comply with. These are the bits of the kit you're going to need to do it. So thank you very much for bringing these in. Thank you very much for bringing that knowledge as well, which is absolutely fundamental, really, and how our sites are performing at the moment. So, Andrew, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you to everyone out there listening to another CF Tech Talking podcast.